not stopping. We're not stopping. I'm working. We're not stopping. We're not. Oh, fuck. Stop the carriage!
Everything all right, sire?
Yes, I just need to stretch my legs a bit. Long journey and all.
Not a problem. I can pull us into the village here. If I recall, there's an inn of some sort around here.
Not for a long time. We're not stopping here long. A short break, and then we continue to Norovia. I've got a job to do, after all.
As you wish, sire.
As Mistus stepped out from the carriage, he winced slightly as the sun caught his eyes, giving himself a moment to adjust as the carriage driver moved over to the side of the dirt road. The village was small, mostly farmland and those who tended to it, so many maps glossed over it entirely. It was humble and insignificant, and yet the distant clamour suggested otherwise. Mistus couldn't quite make out what it was, cheering or jeering. Could as easily be a festival as it could be an angry mob. Mistus's mind is that which would assume the latter. It wasn't his business. He shouldn't have even stopped. So why, gods, why was he walking into the village to investigate? The familiar crackle of fire was now much more audible, as the cacophony of voices grew with each step he took. Mistus's thoughts threatening once more to draw the landscape around him into blaze.
You're not from around here.
Mistus turned to the voice. A sallow-looking farmhand had approached him, his arms crossed, guarded to the obvious outsider.
No, I'm passing through. Went to get some fresh air.
Well, you picked quite the time for it. The monsters have all been slain.
Monsters?
Bunch of hero types came through the neighbouring forests. Slew every damned undead they found.
Were they threatening you? Last I heard, there was a whole city of peaceful undead right across the way from here. What made these any different?
You stupid or something? They're all monsters. Don't matter if they're shambling in the dark or holed up together plotting.
Mistus said nothing more. He dared not waste his time arguing with idiots. Fear and intolerance filling any space logic would reign. He simply brushed past the farmhand and continued on into the village. Alexander was crouched outside the inn, a stack of old barrels casting some shade. He was struggling, ever since that night, ever since he was murdered. His father assured him he was fine. The bad man had hurt him, but nothing vital was hit. It was just scary, but it was over now. The way his father said those words, it was over now. It felt like he was trying to convince himself more than he was his son. Ever since then, Alexander had felt like his insides were twisting within him. The light felt harsher, and whatever he'd eat, he'd throw back up moments later, leaving him starving every day and every night. He just felt wrong.
I'm sorry, my boy. This is all my fault. I should have found you sooner.
The constant apologies didn't help the narrative of everything being okay now. Of course it was a lie, and they both knew it. But as long as they both assured themselves it was true, maybe it could be. Alexander's thoughts drifted from him as he heard a light scratching at one of the walls beside him. A small field mouse chewing away at the wood. It didn't even seem to notice his presence. Alexander simply watched as it slowly gnawed away, stopping occasionally to glance around, its tiny body shaking with every breath and every heartbeat. Blake was inside. He hadn't opened the inn for a few days. After the incident the other day and everything that happened after, he needed to give Alexander a safe and secure space while they figured everything out. Even with the boy playing outside now, Blake felt uneasy. It killed him not to keep his son in sight at all times, but he'd been smothering him. He'd been making him feel worse. There wasn't a right answer. There were only wrong ones. Blake burst through the doors, rushing to where the scream came from. One of the neighbours, Agatha, was stood there, white as a sheet. A basket of breads and fruits dropped at her side as she stared past the side of the inn. Turning the corner, Blake saw his son, covered in blood, hungrily devouring a small field mouse. His now golden eyes focused down on the little creature, before they flicked up to look at the two of them stood there, an inhuman glow quickly fading as his son returned to himself, afraid, confused. Mistus regarded it in silence. A grand pyre of bodies, aflame in the centre of the village. Heroes did this. Came to a land not their own and started killing. A glorious, holy crusade against the plague of undead that threatened these poor, innocent people. And how else could it end but fire? The great cleanser, to reduce your problems to naught but ash. And dancing around the flames were the village folk, their faces alight with joy and sin, taunting the fallen as they skirted the edge of death themselves for simple revelry. Stood beside, still in bloodied armour, the heroes of the hour, the clang of ale mugs lending a percussion to this maddening choir.
They never change.
What you looking all glum for, sir? This is a time for celebration.
I have nothing to celebrate. I simply needed some air. But I see the air is filled with death this day.
They's been dead a long time. Nothing wrong with keeping it that way. For the sake of the children.
Like you all give a damn about children.
Mistus felt anger taking over. This is exactly why he shouldn't have stopped. Why he should have stayed by the carriage. Or if he needed a walk so damn bad he could have walked in the other direction. This was his own fault. The jeering of the mob, the shadows dancing around the flames. The man stood before him, beaten bloody and burned beyond recognition, his face twisted into a silent scream. A charred finger raised at him, accusing, blaming. It was all his fault. It was useless. The village had gathered together, torches and pitchforks at the ready. Word had spread like wildfire. How could it not? Blake had brought a monster into their home. His grief for losing his son had driven him mad. Some ghoul or geist had wormed its way into the village, wearing the face of that poor child.
Hand the creature over.
To hell with the lot of you! You're not touching him!
Blake clutched Alexander tight, interposing himself between his son and the door. The mob outside growing angrier and more fearful with each passing moment. Alexander shuffled fearfully behind his father. This was all his fault. These people are all angry at him. He shouldn't have eaten that mouse. He shouldn't have run away. A stream of blames and faults and ifs and should-haves whipped around the boy's head like a whirlwind.
Fuck! You've all lost your minds!
One of the windows shattered and an oil lantern clattered to the floor, followed by a peppering of glass as flames began to catch. There was no reasoning anymore. Blake knew it, but what else could he do? He'd be damned if they hurt his boy. He'd already failed him once, and now he was going to die all over again. He wouldn't have. He wouldn't fail him again.
Shh. Now you've got to listen to me, son.
Blake turned to Alexander, pressing his head against the boy's, daring not waste what time they had left with something as selfish as a goodbye.
Got to be brave now. You've got to run. You've got to.
He could already see fear growing on his son's face. They both remembered all too vividly what happened when he ran from home the last time.
I know. You can't stay here. I can't let them hurt you. Now listen, you go, grab the rope from the storeroom, you run upstairs, fast as you can, up to your room, okay? You throw open the window, you throw one end of the rope over. You make as much noise doing so as you can. Once you've done that, you run back downstairs and out through the kitchen. You run, and you don't ever stop. Do you hear me?
Alexander simply nodded, unable to speak nor cry in this moment.
Go, son!
He did as his father asked, running as fast as his legs could carry him, Grabbing the rope and flying up the stairs to his room, he slammed open the window, he threw down the rope. He could hear voices coming to investigate as he turned to rush back downstairs. The front door had smashed in as Alexander descended the stairs, and he turned the corner just as his father cried out in pain. The flames had taken over more of the inn in such a short time, and his father stood there alone, fighting off the mob that was rushing in. Alexander stood frozen as he watched one of the villagers run his father through the stomach with a pitchfork and drive him to the ground, into the flame. The iron prongs came out roughly as Blake flopped over, his skin already bubbling and cracking from the heat, as the pitchfork came down once more. The whole building began to creak as the fire took, but Alexander couldn't move, only able to watch in despair as the mob finished with his father and turned their gaze up at the boy, his golden eyes glowing through the smoke. Blake couldn't feel his legs anymore, behind the cold iron of the pitchfork in his back, and all the rest of him seared with pain and fire as he locked eyes with his boy, standing there, staring death in the face for the second time. His failure as a father laid before him. His muscles cracked and tore as he reached forward, clawing through the agony as he pointed to the kitchen door, unable to make any sound but screaming all the same for his son to flee, to escape, to live. And Alexander ran.